Welcome to Hard Talk with me, Zainab Badawi. The new Ethiopian government is making dramatic reforms in the country. The state of emergency has been lifted, the military and intelligence chiefs have been replaced, and opposition politicians have been released en masse from prison. It's all part of a response to anti-government protests that broke out in 2015. One of those released is Andargachew Tsege, a prominent opposition leader from an organisation called Patriotic Ginbot 7. He'd been on death row in an Ethiopian jail for 4 years. Well, now he's back in London where his family live. Will his group renounce violence, and will he go back to Ethiopia to help build the country's future? Andargachew Tsege, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you for having me.
So you were at the airport in Yemen in 2014, and then you were arrested and taken to Ethiopia. You were en route to Eritrea, where your group is based. Just tell us briefly what happened.
Yeah, as you said, I was in transit, and I have a feeling the Ethiopian authorities somehow got the knowledge that I was in Yemen, and maybe they used the very corrupt Yemeni intelligence officers, probably paid them a lot of money, I believe, and they just took me out of a waiting hall, and they passed me to the Ethiopian intelligence officers that came about 6 hours later. You know, they kept me at the airport in some little room. And then when the Ethiopian intelligence officers came, there were 4 of them, they handcuffed me, hands to the back, and used the heavy-duty tape, silver tape, to tape in my eyes and my mouth, and then put a sack, and took me to a waiting plane, and just didn't know where I was. They were taking me, but
that must have been very painful to have thick tape right across your eyes and your mouth.
Yes. And especially when they handcuffed you, when you use your hands at the back, that's very, very painful. Anyway, that's the way they transport me to Ethiopia.
So you ended up in an Ethiopian jail?
Yeah, it's not a proper jail. It's just a villa, and they have a room there, with no windows or nothing. It's just a small hall near the ceiling. And I was kept there for a year and a month until I was taken to the federal prison, the legal prison.
Well, as a co-leader of this opposition group, Ginbot 7, you'd been sentenced in absentia in 2012 to death.
Yeah.
So how were you treated in prison? You were obviously a very, very valuable opposition figure for the authorities.
Well, initially, for about 5 days, in fact, they didn't remove the handcuff. They just kept it.
You were handcuffed for 5 whole days?
Yeah, it's more or less, I didn't sleep because, with your hands at the back, it doesn't matter if it was in the front, So that was another form. I mean, I preferred at the time, in fact, to be shot because the pain was so much.
And what about the tape when they took
it? They
from
took
your
the
eye?
tape and they chained my legs. And then that went on for 5 days. But the handcuff, they brought it to the front. And that was kept for a month, but the chains on my leg were kept there for 3 months. But until I saw the British ambassador after a month or a month and a half, I wasn't sure what would be my fate, because I thought they would just shoot me, and I didn't know where I was as well, really.
You thought that you might just be executed?
Yeah, and just dump me somewhere.
So, although you are an Ethiopian opposition figure, you actually have a British passport, and hence that's why you mentioned the British ambassador. But your wife says that the British authorities at the time were not actually that helpful. She says, I would have thought that the UK would have clarity on this issue and actually say, yes, this is wrong, that you'd been abducted and kept in prison like this. Were they helpful?
Well, there is a little bit of difference, really, between my wife and myself, because she's under so much pressure and she was demanding a lot as well. But for me, the sight of a British ambassador just by itself was a relief, because that was the time I became certain that they would not take a drastic measure, you see. So I knew now the outside world knew where I was. So it was
so
a relief.
British helped you?
Yeah, that was the beginning. And they did, help in because I had nothing really. It was just in solitary confinement. So they demanded, I was ill as well a number of times, and they demanded that I was seen by a doctor or a medical person. And they did, in fact, especially once I was out of the hands of the security and transferred to the federal prison. They did what they could, because you see the nature of the Ethiopian government,
What do you mean they did what they could?
Because the nature of the Ethiopian government, sometimes in these third world countries, and you have dictators running in these nations, you push them, sometimes, and it could backfire, So they tried, in fact, very gentle diplomacy, and what I needed really most was a contact to the outside world, and then books really to read, because I was on my own.
So 4 years in prison, and then at the end of May you were released, when thousands of prisoners, many of them political prisoners, were released by the new Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed. You've been involved in politics, or interested in Ethiopian politics, for a very long time, right from the early 90s after the fall of Mengistu. But in 2005 you went back to Ethiopia from Britain and involved in politics, but then you were arrested, kept in prison for a month, and you came back to the UK. But look, here you are, a major Ethiopian opposition figure. You can't have dual nationality because the Ethiopians don't allow that. It's rather convenient for you, isn't it, just to, when things get a bit rough, you can just come back to the United Kingdom?
Well, if things were really normal, I would have preferred really to work and get engaged in a country where I can contribute a lot, But this is the way things are, so it does help.
Because there were lots of opposition figures who didn't have the luxury of a British passport, who had a really tough time staying in the country, trying to change things from within. Yeah,
but that didn't really save me from the abduction, But it does help as well.
And in 2008, in exile, you formed the patriotic Gimbot 7, this opposition group. You're the Secretary General of it. Did you have a clear vision, an ideology, beyond just opposing the government then of Meles Zenawi, and then in 2012, after he died, of Haile Mariam Desalegn?
Yeah, in fact, more than any political group in Ethiopian history, it is this organization that has a very clear vision. Our vision is based on the outcome of the 2005 election. The election was rigged, we believe the opposition won it, but Meles government stayed using power, really. He stayed in power using his army and his security forces. And the opposition went into courts, in fact, and the courts were filled with political cadres of the ruling party, so we didn't get any result there. We tried to take the case to the streets, but the demonstration was banned. And then we really reflected, what was the problem with that election? And why are not really the grievances of the people are not redressed? And then we came to a conclusion, well, unless you have independent organizations, independent institutions that would make really democracy functional in a country like Ethiopia, there was no point really in going into elections. So our objective became just not taking power, not fighting for power, to make sure that elections are conducted fairly, and the winner takes power civilly.
But Gimbot 7 was also committed to achieving its objectives that you've just outlined by any means, you've said. And earlier in 2012, your party supporters said that they wanted to consider all possible means to dislodge the Prime Minister, Meles Zenawi, from power, formed a popular force to overthrow the tribal and despotic regime through an armed struggle. Some of the supporters of Gimbot 7 said that. So an armed struggle is fundamental to your means.
No, because you see, guys that formed Gimbal 7 had a history that has really caused so much pain in our life. I lost a brother under the army. The chairman, Birhanu Negga, lost his sister, who was 20, a student, was a classmate with Malala Zenawi. So we were very reluctant really to add really armed resistance or violence.
But really, because Niamin Zeleke, head of foreign affairs for Gimbot 7, he's based in the United States, told Hardtalk on the 9th of April this year, in many parts of Ethiopia we are active. Our movement works not only through armed struggle, but also part of civil disobedience. So we espouse not only an armed struggle, but we embrace all forms of struggle, including civil disobedience. That's what he says.
Yes, so, I know.
Armed struggle is using force is part of your objective.
I mean, if you look into what happened during the 2005 election, I mean, really the terror that was conducted by the regime in power, more or less really cornered us into a position where at least we should assert the moral right to engage in any form of struggle. In fact, since we declared that, we've never fired a single bullet.
Really? Is that so?
Really?
Because in 2012, you were found guilty with 22 others of 22 acts of attempted terrorism carried out inside Ethiopia, and it is said that Gimbot 7 have actually claimed major attacks in northern Ethiopia. In March 2017, several attacks in North Gondar zone, in Amhara regional state, also in May 2016 in the southern district of Arba Minch, where it's said that Gimbot 7 killed 20 soldiers and injured 50. And Birhanu Negga, the chairman of Gimbot 7, your organisation, said this is an indication of the beginning of the fight in all directions and areas of the country. So you do carry out attacks inside Ethiopia?
Not really. This probably, I was in prison, but I can tell you, as an organisation, Gimbot 7, I don't think has fired a single bullet.
But why would your colleague, your co-leader, Birhanu Negga, say?
Maybe he's referring, to the total resistance that took place in all these areas.
So you've not heard about killing 20 soldiers and injuring 50?
Not at all. I was in prison.
I understand you're in prison, but you are Secretary General of Gimbot 7.
Completely denied of any form of information. I don't have even access really to the government news. I just assume now, and since I got out, nobody informed me. In fact, if it was really an organization that took these measures, I would have known about it. But I believe, in fact, there was a country-wide resistance, and as part of that resistance, there are a number of armed groups who could really take measures like that. But not Gimbot 7.
But Gimbot 7 is still banned, technically, in Ethiopia, was banned because it was seen as a terror organisation. That much you must know.
Well, you see, who is the terrorist in Ethiopia? Is it a regime that put 70,000 opposition supporters in 15 days after the 2000?
Put those kinds of points to
who is the terrorist? It's a government that killed over 1,000 protesters and put all elected parliamentarians in prison and stayed in power using terror. And we morally asserted really our moral rights rather than really being wanting to use violence.
So will you renounce violence now?
Well, of course. I mean, if the situation in Ethiopia is developing the way it is developing now, a very favorable sort of thing to engage in politics in a very civil and peaceful way. And if we are convinced, in fact, we would definitely renounce it. Because we were very reluctant, in fact, we were pushed into it.
Will you? Are you doing that?
Yes, there is no question. We have to engage with the government, and there is a process, but there is no question that we'll be very eager, in fact, very eager, because it is not good for a country like Ethiopia. It is a very complex and very sensitive country.
Did this issue come up when you had a 90-minute face-to-face conversation with the new Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed on your release? Did you say to him, we are going to renounce violence, Mr. Prime Minister?
To tell you frankly, he didn't ask me, but our discussion covered a lot of issues, and he assumed, in fact, that he knows us as well for some reason, what sort of individuals that we are, for those who formed Gimbal 7. And he's got a very great confidence, in fact, in the way we would handle, in fact, the changes in Ethiopia. So
Did you say he was not banning you? Did you get the impression that, did he tell you, did you ask if you could be unbanned?
I didn't ask him. There were a number of issues there, but I'm sure he's going to do it very soon. He has done so. He has taken a measure in allowing or giving really the right for Brahanu to return, Brahanu Naga, the chairman, and others to return to Ethiopia, and a number of other opposition leaders.
Brahanu Naga, of course, is based in Eritrea, where Gimbal 7 is, and Eritrea, of course, and Ethiopia have had very, very bad relations, to put it mildly, for many, many years, fought a very vicious, difficult war for 30 years, and about 80,000 on both sides, total died. So do you think it was wise to be based in Eritrea, or still to be based in Eritrea?
We're not based in Eritrea. We have a very good relationship with Eritrea. There are few members within Eritrea, but our organization is based in Ethiopia and in the diaspora. But our relationship with Eritrea is not really based on short-term gain, just really for the sake of really getting assistance to fight and struggle against the current government. In fact, my view about Eritreans has helped in convincing the current Prime Minister to take the measure he's taken, in fact.
What is your view? I mean, you've met Isaias Afwerki, the long-time leader of Eritrea. Is this a man you think that Abiy Ahmed could do business with?
Yeah, I think they can do. There are a lot of things that outside world is biased or doesn't know about the Eritreans. I believe, I strongly believe. Of course, there are some issues, but they will. I have a feeling there is going to be peace between Ethiopia and Eritrea, and a very close relationship in all aspects as well.
With Abiy Ahmed, as I said, you met him for an hour and a half. What kind of issues did you discuss?
Well, one issue is what he would do, all the different measures he would take in order to convince the opposition groups and leaders.
Did he convince you that this is somebody you can trust?
Yeah, he did, a lot.
What was the personal chemistry like between you and the new Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed?
Well, he told me, in fact, there was a lot of resistance within his party that I should not be released, but he said to the ruling party either he would resign or I would be released. He gave them that sort of choice. That's what he told me. And I was surprised, really, that he raised the stake that high for my release, and that was the beginning of our good relationship, I think.
So the Prime Minister actually put his job on the line and threatened to resign unless you were released.
Those were exactly his words, and I believe him as well, because I knew how much resistance he would face within his party. There are individuals or groups within his party that hate my guts, I tell you.
He has made very, very dramatic changes. I mean, Awol Allo, an Ethiopian analyst at Keele University here in the UK, says Abiy's appointment has led to moves of tectonic proportions, almost revolutionary. Abiy offers the best chance for the kind of change that people are calling for. As I said, he's changed the military and intelligence chiefs. He's liberalising the economy, and so, more investment can come in. I mean, all sorts of things, releasing opposition figures such as you. I mean, he does offer the best chance, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I cannot comment really the measures he has taken on the economy, because I'm not an economist. But the most essential topic in Ethiopia, or thing, is a political. Once you settle really the political problems in Ethiopia, then it is easy to solve the economic and social problems. So in the political front, what he's taken is very encouraging. But there are a number of things as well that should be done. Is replacing the security chief or the army chief is one thing, but to change, the institutions, these two institutions, to an impartial institutions that serve all people, all opposition, all political groups, is another thing. There is work to be done there too.
One big challenge for any leader, including you and your opposition group, is to appeal to all Ethiopians. You're from the Amhara people, form about 27% of the population in Ethiopia. And the fact of the matter is, even though you say we are for all Ethiopians, your support base is largely still Amhara, just as the new Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, is from the Oromo, and they form about 34% of the population. And again, he's got a lot of support amongst the Oromo. How can you, as Ethiopians, appeal to Ethiopians of all tribal backgrounds?
Well, I mean, Gimbot 7, maybe the rank and file members could be probably, you know, more Amhara, that you could admit. But the entire leadership, there are fewer Amharas than there are Guragas, like the chairman.
But you've just admitted that most of your supporters are from the Amhara. It is an issue, isn't it?
Yeah, it is an issue.
Especially because you've got an ethnic federalist system.
Well, yes, I mean, in the country, yeah. But as an organization, we attract quite a lot of people from different ethnic groups, and we have to work on that, you know, to make it more multi-ethnic or multinational, as we put it in Ethiopia, you know. But it is a problem.
It is a problem, because I mean, we've just seen the creation of a new national movement of Amhara. Yes. And that shows you that ethnic identity is still very important.
Yeah, identity politics has been entrenched now for 27 years. And that's one of the major problems the current Prime Minister would be facing. But the way he's going about it, all his speech is towards really solving this problem of ethnic problem and creating really a unified country.
What assurances did the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed give you that you would be welcome in Ethiopia?
Well, he demanded, in fact, that I shouldn't go back to England as fast as because I met him, and the very evening that I met him, I was leaving. So he was not that happy. He could stay, and the assurance he gives you is personal. But we want it to be a sort of assurance based on law and institutions. The goodwill of a Prime Minister is one thing, but you don't know what the person within the security services or the persons could do, you know, to a person.
And what did he want you to stay in Ethiopia to do? To what? Start a new political party, join the government, or what?
No, talk to different political groups. Those are closer to him, affiliated to him. The Oromo groups that came from abroad as well. So he said, you know, that I should really take my time and discuss. Because
he's having a big sort of public consultation, yes, isn't he? And he's appealing to all opposition groups to return and take part in the political process. So will you? Elections are due in 2020. Will you stand in those elections? In what capacity?
Well, I mean, in my case, you know, I'm a British national, and the Ethiopian law doesn't allow any.
So would you give up your British passport, take an Ethiopian
one,
and stand?
This is something that we have to see in the coming few months or a year time. But we cannot say no to that.
When will you go back?
Well, we haven't finished discussing really appraising the condition in Ethiopia with my fellow comrades here outside, because we need to have a very thorough discussion and come up with our own road plan, you know, how this transition should go.
But finally, do you feel like you want to be part of the effort to build Ethiopia?
Yeah, that has been our dream and our ambition, you know, all throughout. It's not only me, but those who are in Gimbot 7, they would love to do that, provided the condition in Ethiopia is conducive.
Andargachew Tsege, thank you very much indeed for coming on Hardtalk.
Thank you for having me as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.